All right, we're back, and it's COMP228, week 1, lesson 1, part 2 of the video recording, right? Or video recording part 2. So really what we're talking about here is Java. We kind of, in the last video, we kind of did an intro to the course and kind of we outlined where all the assignments are going to be and all that. So if you missed it, if you were late, right, you can always go back to the video, right, and watch the video and see what we did. There's a whole outline of how we're going to do stuff, and I also discuss things about some switches we might do from a test perspective and so on. Okay. I want to also repeat myself in this video that, remember, we have two sections, or two parts to this section. 10:30 to 12:30, part 1, like day 1, if you will, and day 2 is 6:30 to 8:30, right? Which is a piece of crap time frame. I mean, it's just for me. I don't know about you guys if you agree, but that's just really late, right? Now you might have another class during that time. Who has another class around 6:30 or after 8:30 at nighttime on Tuesday? Anybody? Right? That's us, right? On a Tuesday. But anyone else? Do you have anything else after that? No, right? So you guys are sticking around for me, right? It's the Tom show on a Tuesday night, right? I don't want to make it the Tom show, guys and girls. I don't think it's cool, and you know, Ravina will get mad at me, right? Because she's going to say I can't stay up so late. You know, she wants to go to sleep early because her brain functions in a different way than everyone else's, right? So she's going to try and get me to, get to sleep earlier, which means I may do a broadcast for the 6:30 to 8:30 show. I'll say it again for this video, just in case someone missed it in the first video. You don't watch the videos, whatever. And by the way, there's no requirement to watch videos. Watch Tom's videos, and I don't make any money from them anyway. But it's for you, right? So just from an organizational perspective, we may do a broadcast, and it may be all this heavy-duty PowerPoint stuff that I do in the broadcast. So if you want to miss and not fall asleep, this might be a good time to do that, right? And we'll do the practical piece during the day, right? Today we'll do both classes, so I apologize in advance for those people that are going to be here tonight. But for the first day, because there might be other people that aren't here physically in class, I feel weird about not doing the class, and then people showing up and going, the professor said that we don't have to come to class. It's not that. There's going to be a time frame. During that time frame, I'm going to do a broadcast. I might do it with Hangouts. I might do it with whatever, but I'm going to tell you what it's going to be. All right, so you don't have to freak out too much. All right, one thing I'd like you to do before we start this off, because again, this is kind of the demo piece of our class. I'm pulling up the PowerPoint so you can see it. I'm not going to talk about it yet. Let's pull up Eclipse, please. I want you to get ready with Eclipse. So let's pull up Eclipse. For me, Eclipse is on the design side, I believe. I've put it in our development side. I have a development folder. I've got Eclipse. I'm using Eclipse Luna, right? Now your system in front of you might be a different version of Eclipse. Let's bring it up. Go into your version of Eclipse, which is on the system in front of you. Meanwhile, while you're setting that up, I'll run my virtual machine, right? Because I have my virtual machine that I can certainly run, right? So I'm going to kick off my virtual version of Windows 10 that I'm going to start off. And then we'll see what it looks like on the Windows 10 side. Okay, so please, if you don't have it already, pull up Eclipse, right? Who does not have Eclipse available to them somehow? If anyone else does not have it, like if you're in the system in front of you and Eclipse doesn't come up, that's a problem, right? Because otherwise we're going to be doing stuff and you're going to be saying something like, Tom, it's not working for me, how come, right? And that's the real issue, right? Right. So that's really strange. I'm just going to have to change my resolution just a touch here. There we go. So this is Windows 10. If you notice, even on Windows 10, I have Eclipse. So if on Windows 10, if you're using it, I'm also running Eclipse Luna that I'll be putting up. Sometimes what you need to do with Windows 10 or with Eclipse is update Eclipse, right? Especially if you're using things like, you're using Eclipse for Android programming and that kind of thing. You may need to update Eclipse. If you notice, I've got an interesting Windows setup here for Eclipse, right? Yours might look totally different than mine because, again, I've got mine, I've been using Eclipse for a while, and I've got mine set to Android, right, which is okay. But let's say, for example, and by the way, there's different versions in Eclipse. If you look at the interface, and for some people it's really annoying because they're like, I've never seen Eclipse, Tom, and I don't know what this is that I'm seeing. Well, there's different parts to Eclipse we're going to talk about in a second. All right. So one thing to do when you run Eclipse for the first time is do an update. So everyone have Eclipse up? Yeah? show me the fist. All right, I want to see the fist. If you got Eclipse running, put that fist up, ladies and gentlemen. Where's your Eclipse? Oh, there's no excuse. Move to another machine. I want to see everyone have the. I want to see the fists. All right. The reason why I'm saying this is because we all have to stay on the same page. If we don't do this, and you guys tell me you have it up, or you don't never did it before, whatever, it's gonna be a problem. Ravina, what version of Eclipse do you have? Luna, right? Luna's the one that we're using. Right? Anyone else have a different version of Eclipse? Yes. Is that Mars? Okay, that's fine. As long as the recent version of Eclipse, you should be fine in this course. Okay. One thing to do though is, and I highly recommend you do this when you pull up your Windows. If you're using not the machine in front of you, like if it's the school machine, I don't know what updating is going to help you with. But if it's your own machine at home, do this. Go into Help, and if you go to Check for Updates under Help, there should be some updates always available for you. And an example is it's going to check the software sites as long as it's connected properly to the internet, and it's going to bring up a series of updates. I always recommend, hey, update Eclipse, right, before we start off, so that everyone's got the kind of the right version, right? So again, I went to Help, Update. Let me do that again for you guys. Right? So Help, check for updates, right? And then it checks for updates and sees that there's a bunch of updates here. For me to continue, I've got a bunch of updates. You may have none, right? Which is good. If you have none, who has no updates? Didn't think so. But let's just move on. So we go next. This is the bad and good part about Eclipse. I have a bunch of updates to do. I got to go next again. As long as they apply, what I need to do is accept the terms of the license agreements. If I don't do this, I can't continue on. And for example, there's different things I'm updating, right? I need to update all these things and click Finish. Now, Eclipse is going to take its sweet time pulling stuff down from the internet and putting things together. It's going to ask me, hey, this warning, you're installing software that contains unsigned content. Is that okay? I say okay, right? I'm a really trusting guy, right? So I say okay. And then what ends up happening is it says you're going to have to restart Eclipse. Okay? So I restart Eclipse, and it's going to start Eclipse Luna again, and it's going to take it back in. Anyone else using another version of Eclipse other than Luna or Mars? Anybody? Okay. And does everyone have Eclipse on their system in front of them? Anyone not have Eclipse on the system in front of them? You still have a problem? Student. Right? At least for now, you'll be able to get in. No problem. All right, so here's what I like to do. Windows, Mac. Any difference? Let's try that again. Here, let me put the windows together so you can see them together. Windows, Mac, or Windows, Mac. How about that? Mac, Windows. Any difference? Not really. They're almost identical. All right. So really, I'll be interchanging them. If you see this screen and the difference is on the Mac, you see these little symbols here for maximizing and minimizing. That's the difference. On the Windows side, they're up here, right? Really, at the end of the day, there's very little difference between the two editors, right? Some things that you'll see that I have that you don't. I might have other little symbols in here, like for example, because I do Android programming, so you might see these little Android symbols in here. And if you're interested in doing that, you can certainly go, if you're an adventurous kind of person. I'm not going to cover Android in this course, but the Eclipse IDE is used for Android development, and if I wanted to know about that, I would go to Android, as an example, on Google, and now I'm on the Mac side. Mac, Windows. Hold on a second. Let's go back. And if you notice, here's Android Lollipop. That's kind of the version they're pushing these days, right? It talks about Android and how to use the Android and get to the Play Store and all that stuff. If you're a developer though, you want to go to developer.android.com, right? And if you follow me here for a second, and if you want to develop stuff for Android, you can certainly do that. They recommend Android Studio, not Eclipse. At one time, like I said earlier, they were recommending Eclipse as the main IDE for Android development. Now it's Android Studio. However, you could do your own thing. I mean, you don't have to use Android Studio. You could use the Android SDK on your own, right? So, and they have plugins. They have plugins for Eclipse. So, for example, if I type in on the as a search, if I go Android SDK Eclipse, Eclipse plugin, right? It'll give me kind of another link where the ADT plugin, the Android SDK plugin for Eclipse, it'll take me to this part, which is part of the developers network here for Android, and it'll talk about how you can certainly download or install the Eclipse plugin, right, for Android. You can still do that if you're really an Eclipse lover and you're a person who likes to use open source software, because remember, Android is purely open source, right? That's the difference between Android and iOS, right? So if you're someone who wants to be ahead and you want to use Java that we're going to be learning together in this course to do Android programming, then it's okay to use Eclipse for that. And there's tools, and the API documentation is very, very detailed on the Android developer site. Okay? You're still updating? Like I thought. Everyone's going to have an update. I'm telling you right now. It's just like, no, you don't have an update? You're good? You're clean? You're not even in this course, man. What are you talking about? Get out of here. Right? You know, it's just, everyone's supposed to say they're updating something. Come on. All right, but that's really in a nutshell from an Eclipse. So Eclipse starts off. Now, one thing is, you may have seen another screen before for Eclipse. I'm on the Mac side now for a second. And one of the things you may notice is, if I go to Eclipse, my Eclipse thing, on the Mac side, you'll see under Preferences, if you're a Mac user, there's a bunch of different kind of things we can use for to do preferences to adjust the editor, the IDE. If I go back on the Eclipse side, on the Windows side now, for preferences, if you notice, it's not in the same place, right? Because it's not Mac. If I go to Window, though, and if I go all the way down here to Preferences, now you're going to see the same screen, more or less. Okay, there's Windows Preferences, Preferences, slightly different. This is where we get some differences, Mac, Windows, right? By the way, Linux, if you're a Linux user, right? Linux has a great interface for Eclipse as well. They look very similar, right? Okay, so let's take a look. So underneath here, you can see that they have a bunch of different options. Like, for example, if I want to go under General, underneath here, if I click this open, right, you see under Editors, go to Editors. Under Editors, you can see that there's different ways. If I open up this, if I kind of expand that one as well, if I go to Text Editors, you can see that at the top here, there's something called Colors and Fonts. If I click on Colors and Fonts, I can adjust my colors and fonts, right? Like right now, from my text editor perspective, I'm using Courier New 10. Right? Now that's pretty small for doing stuff with my text editor, for my text font, right? So if I wanted to change that, and this is the first thing I'm showing you how to do in Eclipse, I want to click Edit, and I can choose, instead of Courier New 10, I might choose 12 or 14. And that would actually physically change the size of my font inside the editor. Okay? So that's what preferences. Preferences have a lot of little things like that you can adjust the look and feel of your Eclipse. There's also different theming. If you really are a person who likes a dark theme compared to a light theme, that's fine. You can find a million themes almost literally on the web for modifying your Eclipse to make it look and feel like you want it to, right? Some people prefer a dark theme from a contrast perspective. That's perfectly fine. That's totally up to you how you want to do it. Okay, but let's talk about Windows now a little bit, right? So here's our Windows. We're on the Windows side, and I'm looking at Windows, and if you look at File, go to File for a second, and if you look at this area called Switch Workspace, right? Now mine is using VMware hosts, shared folders, blah, blah. Yours is going to use something else, okay? Yours might use your workspace, your H drive, or whatever it says. What workspace is your show?
C drive.
C drive, right? This is a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is if it's part of the C drive, that means that your workspace is tied into the machine in front of you. The bad thing is the workspace is tied into the C drive in front of you, which means that when you go away and you do a program here, it's gone, right? So, smart thing to do is create a workspace on your network drive somewhere. Please, you don't have a lot of room on your network drive, or on some kind of on another machine somewhere, some kind of a place where you can access, like a Dropbox, Google Drive. You can do that kind of stuff too, because it can also give you that kind of space. And when you load up your workspace, right, you can switch your workspace to anywhere else you want. Here's an example, right? If you look at me, I have under my C drive, right? So this is like, again, I'm using my virtualized version of Windows 10, the school edition, right? And if I go down to my C drive, I have a bunch of stuff, right? I might also have something for when it comes to Dropbox. Like say I want to use Dropbox for my virtual drive somewhere, right? So if you notice, there's no Dropbox folder here. But let's say, for example, I want to go Dropbox or Google Drive. Here's Google Drive. Hey. Or here's also OneDrive if you're a Microsoft person, right? Either way, whether it's Dropbox, OneDrive, Google Drive, whatever you want to use, you can use one of these things or your school drive as your workspace. So let's try this out. So I'm going to go, my OneDrive is up to date. I want to open my OneDrive folder somewhere. So here's my OneDrive folder, right? This is important. And I can also look at my, if I edit address, I can see that it's OneDrive, right? Now how do I get to this in my, if I was going to use my OneDrive, how do I get to this in Eclipse? I have to point to it somewhere as my workspace. It's a good idea to find something that you're going to use, right? That isn't part of just your regular your C drive in front of you, because that means that you'll have to go to that computer to sit there to get your files and folders, right? So that's the risk. And anything you leave there, if someone points to your C drive again, and they can find your files and folders if from a security perspective. Chances are not, but it's there, it's on the C drive, and if it's on the C drive, it's available to somebody else. All right, so again, if you notice my C drive, it's a mess, right? It's all kinds of stuff in here, and yours should be kind of the same, and I can always pull it out, kind of point to a particular folder. If you're someone like me and you don't like the standard location, the OneDrive location as an example, or someplace else, you can certainly create your own. So here I am in this PC or on the C drive. Let's go on the C drive for a second. So here I'm just going to go and pull down the C drive. Here's my C drive. I want to create a new folder, and I'm going to call it Workspace, right? So right on the C drive, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go New Folder, right? And under here, we're going to make a new thing called Workspace. Make a capital W. There's my workspace. Pull it up for you guys to see that. Whoop, there it is. So my workspace now is empty, right? Now I want to point my Eclipse to my workspace. How do I do that? Well, I go File, Switch Workspace, and I point to Other, right? And then I change my workspace to, instead of where it says C Users Tom Workspace, by the way, you can choose whatever you want there. I want to point to Workspace on my PC, right? So I know that one day when my PC answers me, right? Right now my PC is, I'm calling out to it. It's just, it's ignoring what it's, hey, there it is. Here it is. I have C Workspace. That's where what I'm looking right now, C Tom Workspace. I don't want that. I want C, because I made a new workspace, C Workspace with a capital W. There it is right here. Right, is my workspace folder, and press OK. Now I could have typed it in, C:\workspace, and that would have worked too. If I expand this copy settings thing, let's take a look. It says I can copy my workbench layout, my working sets, all that kind of stuff I want to. I'm going to leave these blank and unchecked and press OK. Now watch what happens to Eclipse. When I press OK, it restarts Eclipse, and I get the screen you may have seen already. By the way, it implants this metadata thing. Give it a second while it's spinning, because Eclipse is going to start off with this screen. Now, did you see this screen when you started off? You may have. If you haven't, you'll see this screen if you change your workspaces. But there's a danger here, ladies and gentlemen. When you change your workspaces, you won't be able to see your files anymore that used to exist, somewhere else. And the reason for this is because Eclipse is a project-based environment, which means that you have a project window where you can see all your project files, right? And then you have the other window, the editor window, which is on the side. Okay, so here's my startup screen. I could do some tutorials here through Eclipse, and you go ahead and do them if you like. There's also some samples you can also download. There's an overview of Eclipse if you want to understand what this thing is, this crazy editor. You can also just click the X up here, right? If I click the X, my version, if you notice, shows me that I've included my Aptana plugin for Eclipse. Yours may not. If you notice on the top right corner here, I have this thing that says Java. Do you have this Java thing on the right hand side? You may or may not have it. This shows you this something called a perspective. The Java perspective means that my windows have been defaulted. There's a template that I'm using called the Java perspective that allows me to use to see these windows, my outline, my problems, my Java doc, which is documentation about Java, right? My declaration, if I make anything else, some other things that I have in here. I also have this Package Explorer on the left-hand side. Notice how there's nothing in it. Okay? So this here in my Package Explorer is where I'm going to be doing a lot of the work. Windows, Mac. All right? Let's go back to Mac. Mac, Package Explorer. My window looks a little different because right now, remember what we did before, if you're a Mac person or a Linux person, I'll show you how it looks like again. So again, I want to go to File, and I want to switch my workspace. So I switch workspace. Right now I'm in Users, Thomas, Documents, Workspace. I want to make another workspace. This is exactly the same on the Mac and Windows pretty much. That's pretty loud. I'm going to choose Browse. And if there's the other way to do it is you can browse for another workspace. So right now I'm pointing at Android. I'm going to go to another workspace for me. In fact, I'm going to point to a workspace within our folder for the course, right? So I'm going to go to, I'd like to go to Courses, right? Courses is what I want to do. So here's Courses. My course, I have a course folder. You might have a course folder called COMP228 Java Programming. And I'm going to create a workspace folder inside this folder that I'm going to work in, right? So here's new folder. I'm going to call this thing Workspace, right? I'm just showing you it again so you don't, it's not, you've never seen it before. And press Open. When I do that, it kind of puts the path in for my workspace. I'm going to press OK, and then it's going to restart Eclipse for me. When it restarts Eclipse, I'm going to get the start screen like I showed you before. And when I get the start screen, I don't need it, so I'm going to close it off. Once I get the start screen closed, you might see this. You might see, if you notice, some other stuff going on here. I see a console, I see problems, I see JavaDoc. There's some extra stuff here that you didn't see on the Windows side. I also have this outline, and I have this task list. Do you have a task list on yours? What do you have? Do you have task list and outline? Yeah? You probably won't need task lists. So let's just get rid of that. Right? So get rid of task list for a second. So now you don't have that. Console you may or may not need. That one kind of gives us an output. Leave these other windows up here for now. Right? But your Package Explorer you definitely need. So here's what mine looks like. Outline on the Windows side. Problems, JavaDoc declaration, and on the left you have Package Explorer. I'm showing you this stuff so that we're on the same page when we start programming. You're like, hey, I don't have that window. Now you have the same windows. If you did what I just did and changed your workspace, you'll have the exact same setup that I do. Okay? Setup is important because you and I are going to do stuff together, right? If you don't do the same stuff I do and you try and do your own things, then you're going to be like, but I don't see that. Okay. Let's do a Hello World application. Oh my God, right? This is like the main thing. If we can't do a Hello World application today, we got problems, right? I know, and please forgive me if you're like Java experts and I'm going too slow for you. I could speed up, but I don't want to lose anybody, right? So let's just do this. Let's go to File. There's a couple ways to do this. File, New. If I go to Java Project, you might see Java Project as one. Or if you have never done a Java project before, right, you might just see Project. Right, so let's go to Project for a second. Right, File, New, Project. Underneath Project, you notice there's different types. This is on Windows, by the way. There's different types I can choose. I have different plugins than you do, so you may not see all these things that I see, right? For example, I have Java Project, I have PHP Project, I have Rails, Ruby, Web, right, and so on. You may only see Java Project. And if you don't see that, you can always just go to Project. Do you guys see Java Project? Yay! Click that, okay? And click Next, all right, in this little wizard. All right, here's the next piece. The next piece is just going to ask you in the Java piece to say, hey, what's my project name? Okay, this is important because we want to make sure that the name is going to be defined as part of our workspace. So the name is almost like the name of the project. So let's just call this thing COMP228, and we'll just call this Lesson 1, 01. All right, there's our project name, COMP228 Lesson 01. And if you notice, there's other options here. Like, for example, JRE. It says our JRE, Use and Execution Environment JRE Java SE Standard Edition. That's what this stands for, 1.8. Do you guys all have Java SE-1.8? Anyone have something else? If you have something else, like, for example, Java SE 1.7, right? I cry for you, right? There's tears coming out of my eyes right now. You can't see them, but they're there, right? It means that you may not be able to get the same kind of results. You may have different code hinting than I do. Java 1.7 is the earlier version of Java. Java 1.8 is what we're at. Java 8 is the short name, is the short way to say it. It's slightly different. They have a little bit more additional tool sets and functionality that's built into Java 8, right? We're using Java 8 in this course. So if you don't have this, please, you have to update your system. Okay? All right, so that's Java 1.8. And it says create separate folders for sources and class files. That's cool. The other option is for project layout. It says use project folder as a root for sources and class files. Let's not do that. Let's leave it as this. Create separate folders for sources and class files. Okay? Before you click OK, I'm going to do it on the Mac side again, just to have another example. So I'm going to go New. This time I'm going to click Java Project instead of Project. So this is the other option, right? So you see it twice, right? And here it's the same idea. So I'm going to make this so it's going to be called COMP228 lesson. What do I call it? Lesson 1? Lesson 1, right? And again, if you notice, it's exactly the same thing. I'm going to press Finish, right? If I click Next here, it's not going to give me too much other things. If I go Next, it just shows you this stuff. Leave it as is. I wouldn't modify, if you were going to click Next, I wouldn't modify any of this right now, right? And just click Finish. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like. Here I'm just going to click Finish as well. So I've got it on both sides. Now if you notice, on the Windows side, the Mac side, it's look very similar, right? They have, if you uncollapse your folders here, you have a couple of things. You have the Java runtime system library right here, right? That's what this piece is. Don't mess with this, please. If you mess with this Java SC runtime library here, these jar files, you and I won't have the same thing at all. In fact, you would be crying much worse than I'm crying right now for you if you already did that, right? So don't mess with that. Your source files, this where it says SRC, is the source files. Right now, use the source, Luke, because there's nothing there. It's empty. The source surrounds us, right? It's the container for all of our files. And right now, there's nothing in there. There's no files. You haven't created your first file. We need to create a new file, right? And in Java, remember that because it's object-oriented first, okay, just like C# is, we need to encapsulate our file within a class, our main class. Okay, how do we do that? I could certainly write it from scratch, but that's just silly, right? We don't do these silly things. We're going to right-click on our source file, and we're going to go New. And we're going to go down to where it says Class. Please do this with me, right? Class, right? When I click on Class, it's going to bring up another little dialog box that's going to show me this little class, right? Now, it's actually asked me for a package. For today, we're not going to talk packages too much, but think about a package as a namespace. If you are familiar with namespaces from C#, then you understand that the package from, can you grab the door for her, please? The package that you're going to see is a namespace or a folder, right? So I could certainly create a package or use a package here. I'm not going to be talking packages today, just grab a seat. But I will explain that later on. Okay, what packages are, they're just like namespaces. Okay, so for now, let's leave it as this. If you notice, my source folder is this. I need a name for my class, right? My new class. And if you notice, there's some other stuff down here we may have to think about. We're going to make a hello world file, right? So let's just do it. Let's call it hello, capital world, all one, no spaces. Right? That's the name of our class. All right, here's one thing before you click continue, right? If you notice down here, my superclass is my Java language object. Remember, the object, just like it is in C# as a review, is the super duper super class, the ancestor of all ancestors, or the predecessor of all predecessors for every object that you make in Java, right? Now you can browse and select other ones as your superclass for your class. But for now, let's just leave it as Java lang object. This is the superclass for all other objects. Okay. Down here on the bottom where it says, which method stubs would you like to create? Now this is why we use this dialog box. If you were to create your own classes, you have to do all this yourself. Why reinvent the wheel? This does it all for you. One thing we do want to include here is public static void main string. We want to include that. I want to check that on, right? I want to uncheck my inherited abstract methods because there really isn't any abstract methods I need for a hello world, right? And also constructors from my superclass. I don't want to check that on. I could check on generate comments, but for now, in this example, we're not going to do that. And I'm going to press finish. When I do that, it creates a class. Now let's take a look at our project structure. It's changed, right? On the left, you notice that there's a source file, and then there's a default package that I have in here. Remember, because we didn't specify the package. We'll talk about packages in the future, but for now, leave it as default, right? On the right-hand side, you notice that there's a couple of things you've seen. Public, class, hello world. Hey, there's the container. This thing here, between these two curly braces here, this container, hello world, this class, hello world, is the container for our little program. Okay. We do have this thing called public static void main, very similar to C#. If you remember doing console applications of C# before, very similar to that, we have this thing, and we have this argument string array for any arguments we want to pass into the main if we were going to use command line or some other way of injecting arguments into our application. Okay, let's take a look here. Java lang string, it actually, if I hover over this, Eclipse, I don't know if it's doing it for you, but Eclipse is giving me some code hinting and actually going back into the Java docs and saying, hey, the string, I'm hovering over string, is a string class which represents character strings. So you see, Eclipse isn't so bad for giving you some updates, but this is what it's doing. Okay. So let's say you missed this whole thing I just did, and you want to try and see that again. One more time. Here's I'm going to do the same thing on the Windows side or the Mac side. Here's Mac. I'm going to right click. Right on the Mac, I'm going to go New, right class. Right. This time, if you notice, here's the same thing. I've got my package, my default package, and my encoding type. It asked me for a couple of other things. I'm going to still call it the same thing, so I'm going to call it Hello World. Right. If you haven't done this before. Here it is. I'm going to unclick inherited, and I'm going to click on public static void main, just like I did on the Windows side, and press finish. Right? And when I do that, it gives me the same idea. No difference, if you notice, from one to the other. Right? Now, one's a little smaller. I'll be increasing the size of this later on, so you guys can see this later on tonight. But at the end of the day, it looks identical. One thing is, there's this comment. Notice how we do comments here in Java. Really quickly, it's a little different than anything else. We put the double slash. We can also use the this kind of comment style as well. Both comments work. One thing to notice is that you know some of this already, right? You've used C#. Yeah, this isn't like it's rocket science, guys, right? It's not like you're looking at this going, I don't know anything about Java. I've never programmed in Java in my life. Yes, you have. You just haven't, you don't know it, right? It's very similar. There are some differences that we're going to highlight. For example, the way Java treats public and private instance variables. By default, hey, here's a question. What's the default for C#? For instance variables? Are they public by default or private? What's the default for Java? Let's see. We'll see what that does. There's some differences there, okay? And that's the difference. Some small little differences that you're going to see. Also, some keywords are a little bit different, right? You're going to see some differences when it comes to some keywords in Java than you do in C#. But more or less, you've got the same kind of control structures. All right, so we want to print something out to the console, right? Remember, we did a console.writeLine with C#, right? And go back. So here's Windows, Mac, right? And you can see there's no difference right now except for how big these things are. So if I just tried that out, if I said console dot and I press Control on your keyboard, Control and space, there's no suggestions, right? There is no way of doing console write line, right? That's the one change. We can't do a console write line. So how do we output to the console now if we're going to do a hello world? Anyone looked ahead? Who's an expert in Java that can help us out? Tyler, you're an expert in Java. What would you do? Is it console.writeLine to make a system.out.println, right? Let's check this out. So how we do this? If I'm wrong, I'm going to start typing system. So I'm going to say system, right? Dot. See the code hinting that it gives me, right? If I go out dot, and then if I start going print line, which is what I want, system.out.println, that's going to give me an output inside of here for my hello world. So here's my hello world, right? System.out.println. And I'm going to save this by Control S, of course. On the Mac, it's Command S, right? Okay, so again, you got your crystal. Now, how do I run this thing? I want to debug this thing, right? How do I run this thing? Well, if you notice on Eclipse, there's this run command. It looks like the similar command that you see in Visual Studio. However, sometimes what you need to do is you need to create something called a run configuration with Eclipse compared to Visual Studio. So let's just try clicking this and see what happens first with not doing anything. I'm going to click it. Well, what it does is it just created a run configuration for me, and down here in my console, it should show hello world. Anyone see anything else? Hey, here's something that I did that I didn't tell you to do. I said system.out.println. I put hello world in brackets, and I put a semicolon, because in Eclipse and in Java, we need semicolons to terminate all of our statements, just like we do in C#. Ladies and gentlemen, if you know how to do this, you know half of Java right now, right? Seriously, right? I mean, really, it's just like, that's that simple, because that's how close we are to, remember, Java is a C-influenced language, and because Java is a C-influenced language, the things you know in C#, a lot of the stuff will work in Java. There'll be some changes, there'll be some differences in the way Java handles certain things, and those are the things we're going to be talking about in the first part of this course, in addition to other things that only work in Java and don't work in C# in the latter part of the course. So we've done our hello world. Any questions on this? Hello world. Hello everybody. All right. I'm going to take a quick break. We've kind of talked for about an hour now, right? In a bit, an hour and 8 minutes maybe, in that range. I'm also going to go around to make sure everyone's set up properly and kind of talk to you guys, right? If you need to take a smoke break, bio break, you need to take a vitamin, you know, need to kiss your girlfriend, go outside and do it now, and then come back, right? And then we'll resume in about 10 minutes, okay?